Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Hi folks, I'm George Smart, and welcome to a special bonus edition of U.S. Modernist Radio. Tom has the day off, so I'm turning all the sound knobs myself. A constant reminder, as you'll soon see, how amazing Tom is as an engineer and a co-host. You do not want me as your engineer. Today on U.S. Modernist Radio, it's about Home, the name of a new streaming series on AppleTV+, featuring groundbreaking ideas and inspiring stories behind some of the world's most imaginative houses. In this series, visionaries challenge conventional concepts of home and rethink how we live. The 9-part series premiered in April, and on this short edition, you'll meet one of the story producers, Loren Gomez. We discuss 2 of the houses in the series, one in Sweden, which she produced, and the other in Austin, Texas, which she did not. My guest is Loren Gomez. She is a producer on the new series by Apple, Home. She's worked in nonfiction for about 10 years, with experience in documentaries ranging from post-production editing and storytelling to producing out in the field. She has been involved in such series as Warriors of Liberty City, The Day I Met El Chapo, Last Chance U, Party Down South, this is fun, Motor City Masters, Gator Boys, wow, Best Inc., my personal favorite, Love Games, Bad Girls Need Love Too. But the one that I remember the most, I actually watched some of this, was Barbecue Pitmasters. Hi, Loren, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Wow, you really did a lot of research on me. You went back far.
I know, and so I want to talk with you before we get into Home about Barbecue Pitmasters.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Do you remember an episode, and it had a great title. It was called A Roasted Development.
I think I do remember that. Wow.
And this is the one where you're filming a competition somewhere, and one of these big guys, like, falls over practically.
I think there were a few mishaps like that. Yeah, probably too much rich barbecue.
Yeah. And it was.
I remember the food was delicious.
Yeah, and it was a great.
We got to sample it.
It was a great element of the story. So as a story producer here, I want to ask you, did you have any inkling that he was going to kind of have a heart attack, or did it just happen on its own?
It's definitely nonfiction, so there's no way we could have planned that. But from what I remember, I believe he's okay now. So I think that's really all that matters.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is that. But it was just such an interesting twist in the story.
Yeah.
Because here they
get some really weird things popping up. Yeah. In these shows.
I guess my point is that the whole artistry of putting together the story is being able to find these kind of interesting vectors. And one thing I noticed in a number of the different episodes of Home, I watched 3 or 4 of them, was how you really made these people who are not celebrities into human interest stories.
Yeah, I think as human beings, we all have the same sort of emotions and reactions to life, and I think that is priority when you're going through and sifting through footage, which is what I had the pleasure of doing. It's finding those very human moments and sort of building and making sure that you're representing these people accurately. It didn't really take much work with a lot of the characters on Home, though. I feel like a lot of these characters, Anders in Sweden, or Ali and Brett in Mexico. I mean, these people, they just wear their heart on their sleeve. So it wasn't hard to make them come to life. They are very passionate people that Um, they're just very forceful with their ideas. They're very inspiring people to be around.
Well, let's talk about one of those, an episode you worked on in Sweden, the house that's surrounded by a greenhouse. Tell our listeners about that house as best you can, given this is not a visual medium.
I mean, he talks about himself as just kind of this normal guy who is an engineer. He's got an engineering mind, and he started building a home on this huge plot of land in Sweden. And it was just a traditional log house that he wanted to start out with. And these log houses are old and they tend to get kind of drafty. And so he was trying to figure out ways to cover his home. In the process of him building this log house with his own two hands. He didn't have much help from anyone other than his brother-in-law. And, the winters are harsh, and so he's obviously not going to get this thing built in a couple months, so he needed something to kind of cover the log house. And then he found and came up with the idea of putting a greenhouse on top of it to help, cover the log house so that it can survive the winter and he can continue to build. It just kind of became this really beautiful design as we see it now, and not realizing that there's like Mediterranean climate that is actually produced from the greenhouse effect of having a greenhouse within your home. So any exterior parts within outside of the log cabin, but inside of the greenhouse, you have this amazing climate perfect for growing vegetables, fruit, anything really.
It's very lush as it's presented in the video.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is.
I mean, when you see it lit up at night, it's just shockingly beautiful. I think it's just a greenhouse that you can just order. I think he just ordered it. It wasn't like a custom greenhouse. Obviously, he had the sizing and all that figured out, but for a first go of it, I mean, it's pretty beautiful. And they have, a second story that is kind of like another area where they can garden, and the sun hits this garden upstairs, and also it's like a play area for the kids. Their land is just amazing. It's where Anders is. He seems to be very busy. I know he's been working on other prototypes on his land as well. So he's not stopping at that. He's got many other plans in the works for the nature house concept.
I love the way the chimneys stick up through the top of the greenhouse.
I know. It's such a great design. Right, and it's very efficient for warming the home. You can trap the heat within the greenhouse as well. You're not using any energy.
I believe this was a concept called a thermal envelope. Is that right?
Yes, I believe he does. He does reference that. Mm-hmm.
Which was really big in the 70s. Everybody had their idea of a thermal envelope house.
There was a book that he took his inspiration from. It was a Banks Warner book. So he kind of took that and ran with it, and also decided to add his own renewable water system, which is actually amazing. He developed that himself. I mean, he is just an amazing brain. Just very analytical, just brilliant. He's just brilliant, and he just has an idea, and he just wants everyone to get on this idea, and we can all live happily ever after.
I'm a fan of this obscure thing called Danish Noir, which is a Danish crime TV series. I could see that house, all lit up at night, being the perfect crime scene for a TV show. You could. I mean, you could see the car coming up to it very slowly, letting out the passengers. They're all moving very quietly, going up and knocking on the door, and then there's a commercial break.
Sounds good to me.
Let's talk about another house in the home series. This one is really fascinating, and it was in Austin, Texas. It's essentially, you're putting the nature on top of the house and around the house because you're somewhat underground.
The Edgeland house is in Austin, Texas. It was a concept all about reclaiming the land and sort of nurturing the land back to its native habitat. This house is kind of built underground, so they had to dig underground, and this land was also toxic at one point because of all the oil drilling they were doing in the area. The house is separated in two sections. I think in total the square footage is about 1,300 square feet. But the windows in this home is floor to ceiling gorgeous. Did you watch this episode?
Yes.
Okay. To me, it's very minimal and beautiful and modern. I just think it's an amazing way to rethink your home. It's split in two. Actually, it seems like on one side there's an area with the kitchen and all the sort of communal spaces, and then on the other side you have the bedroom. And there's this really beautiful triangular pool that kind of sticks out. It's so hard to describe. I'm not doing it any justice, but it is the most amazing design concept. And Chris Brown, he is a science fiction writer and a lawyer, so he's got a pretty interesting background. I think the sci-fi background really kind of informed this design.
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah, but unfortunately I didn't go there, and I didn't produce that episode, but I wish I did. I mean, it is amazing.
Now, the home series is pretty distinctive. I mean, you're really doing a documentary on one house for each of these episodes. There are 9 of them so far, is that right?
There are 9 episodes, that is correct.
Okay.
They're about on average 35 minutes each, so it goes pretty quick. It's a lot of information packed into those 35 minutes. The story is really, of course, the house is what grounds the story, but it's really about what kind of pushed their ideas and visions that sort of led to the creation for these homes in their, and communities. So it's all about innovation and just gives us a good redefinition of what home means around the world.
In writing something like for the Sweden show, do you go and interview the owner? How do you go about the process of creating a story arc for those 35 minutes?
Well, it really starts with the house. Like I said, it's going and finding a home they all seem to have this sort of environmental conscience. Any episode, Mexico, for example, they're using 3D printing design, and you're not using any waste. So there's a lot of, also Charma Springs for Bali. Laura Hardy builds her beautiful palatial home completely out of bamboo. So it starts with the home, but as you start to really dive into their story, you really want to know what the motivations are for a lot of these homes. And that's the really interesting thing is that we discover is just these people are just so much bigger than themselves. I think they have these ideas and they want to expand their ideas out into the world in hopes that, other people will be inspired to use alternative resources or to use existing resources to create something new. It was really fun. It wasn't hard to sort of map out how the story would be told because we just had too many things interesting, and it's just a matter of just prioritizing and picking what the best and most relatable stories would be. So,
is there going to be a second season of this in the works?
I don't know yet. We'll have to wait and find out. It would be great because, I would love to do this kind of work forever and find these homes and these people endlessly interesting. I think it's really also interesting for us to think about, as we are sheltering in place at home, it's also a good time to kind of think about our own living situations and improving the spaces that, we're in every day. I know I've been inspired by a lot of these people. I have my own meadow out front now. Thanks to Chris Brown. And we try and build things ourselves. We have a wood shop and back as well, so we're being inspired by Anders and his abilities. We'll see if there's a second season. I hope so.
Well, Loren, it's been really fun talking with you. And if you're ever in the
Thank
Raleigh
you.
area, we'll go out for barbecue.
I would love to do that. Thank you so much for having me.
Nice talking with you.
You as well.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to hear past shows, discover 7,000 mid-century modernist houses, and access classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with more quirky guests and another edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.